Welcome to the Color of Music podcast series, which is being recorded today in the auditorium of the Nelson Centre of Musical Arts in Nelson, New Zealand. We're thrilled to have Rosemary Galton, a talented soprano, violinist, teacher, and conductor, as our guest. Originally from the UK, Rosemary has built an impressive career across Europe and New Zealand, performing with prestigious ensembles and leading choirs. With a strong background in both historical performance and choral conducting, she brings a new perspective to the world of classical music. I'd like to start off just saying, can you tell us about your early musical experiences in the UK and what led you initially to pursue the violin?
Well, I guess I grew up with music in the family, in the household. My mum is a piano teacher, and I have a twin brother, and we both started learning piano at a very young age. My mum's tried to teach us to begin with, and she quickly realised that actually it would be better if someone else was teaching us. And I think she originally thought that maybe my brother might learn the violin, but he actually quite took to the piano, and whereas I really didn't. So I decided I'd like to try the violin. I was probably maybe 6 or 7 when I started. And yeah, I enjoyed the violin, so I carried on with that. And then as we got a bit older, my brother started learning the cello. So in the family, we had a piano trio with my mum playing piano and my brother playing cello and me playing violin. So we grew up playing chamber music as a family. Singing I didn't really come till a bit later. My dad always sang. My dad always sang in choirs. And I have memories of evenings when we were visiting the extended family, my grandparents and cousins and aunts and uncles. We might sit around the dining table and sing madrigals after dinner, that sort of thing. So I think when I was about 15 or 16, I kind of begged my mum, can I have some singing lessons? And so, I started some singing lessons at school. At about that age, 15, I think. And that was really what got my love of singing going.
And talk a little about education. You know, I'd seen you studied mathematics at Clare College in Cambridge.
Yes.
Before focusing on music at Guildhall School of Music and Drama. How did this unique academic background influence your music, your career in music?
Well, the maths, so maths and music were the kind of the two things I was really good at school. So it was always a question of which do I pursue at university. And then I realised that that I could have this opportunity of taking up a choral scholarship at Cambridge. And I sort of thought I didn't really want to study music academically. And so I decided that maths would be an easier way into university. So I applied to Cambridge to study mathematics, but to sing in the chapel choir with a choral scholarship. And the maths and music kind of combination has also come. It's also from my family because my dad actually also studied mathematics at the very same Cambridge college that I went to. And he ended up going into computer science. So I always had this maths, computing sort of background as well. But then once I did get to Cambridge, I think I spent more time making music than actually studying maths.
Can you talk a little bit about your experience at Guildhall?
So at Guildhall, I studied on the early music course, or as it's called, the historical performance. And I think out of the kind of 4 main music colleges in London, the Guildhall was the only one that actually took voice students on their early music course. The other colleges, the early music course was mainly for instrumentalists. So that's why I wanted to go to the Guildhall there. And I studied, my voice teacher there was this extraordinary Italian woman, Laura Sarti, and I think she was in her 80s when she was teaching me, but she had this kind of larger-than-life personality, and she'd done all the big operatic roles on stage, but she also loved singing early music, particularly Purcell. So I got to study a lot of Purcell with her, Handel, some Bach, that sort of stuff.
Was also historical performance part of all of the schooling there?
Yeah, yes. So we would have dedicated classes to medieval and Renaissance music and Baroque music and classical music. So I got to sing things like Schubert Lieder with a forte piano rather than a piano, so more like the instrument that Schubert would have been using. And there was emphasis on the research about, how would this music have been performed originally, and how should that inform our performance today? And the early music department attracts a lot of interesting people. So out of my course there, I ended up forming a small ensemble we were called Poetical Music, and the main members of that ensemble actually were we had harpsichord, theorbo, a viol, and an early harp. So I had this big continuo section to then sing Dowland, Purcell, Monteverdi, all these wonderful songs, and all this different colour in the continuo section. We also had some violinists come play with us, and a flute as well. Yeah.
What an experience.
Yeah.
And now you can bring some of that to us here.
Yes.
One of the questions I had here is, you've performed an extensive range of Baroque and classical repertoire. And you try to kind of explain a little bit, but what really drew you to that?
I think it's always been the period I've kind of most been interested in. I think maybe in my late teens, when I was at school, one of my music teachers introduced me to Palestrina, and I would listen to Palestrina, Missa Papai Marcelli, on endless repeat, and never went back. And that was I guess that was what made me want to do the choral scholarship, get into that early choral singing polyphony. And then it just went from there, really.
You've already touched on it a little bit, but you've worked with some esteemed ensembles. What have been some of the highlights of your consort singing career?
So I worked quite a few years when I was living in London with a group called the Huelgas Ensemble, and they're actually based in Belgium. They're very well known in Belgium, in the Netherlands, in that area of Europe. The name, I think, comes from a maybe 15th century or 13th century Spanish codex, but they are directed by, again, a lovely but eccentric man, Paul van Nevel, and he really researches these very obscure manuscripts and brings them to the group. So I sang a lot of obscure early music with them all around Europe. What else? But then another highlight of my performing career, quite shortly before we actually left the UK and came out here, I did a wonderful tour of the Bach St. John Passion with your previous guest, Roddy Williams, singing Christ, singing Jesus. And it was a staged production conducted by Sir Simon Rattle and staged by Peter Sellers. This was with the Orchestra of the Age of Enlightenment group based in London.
Yes.
And we performed in London, and we went to Germany and France. I can't remember exactly where we went, but we had a great time with that production.
How does consort singing differ from solo performances, and what do you enjoy most about it?
I just enjoy making music with other people, really. You have to really be listening, watching, being aware of what your fellow musicians are doing and what your part in the ensemble is. I love singing solo as well, but it can be scary being up there by yourself. There's some safety in numbers when you're in a small ensemble.
We also wear another hat, and what inspired you to start conducting, and how does it complement your work as a soprano and a violinist?
Well, I never really thought I'd end up conducting, but I sort of fell into it by accident in a way. And I really have only been conducting since moving to New Zealand 3 and a bit years ago. But I was approached by the Nelson Youth Choir and asked if I'd like to conduct them for a year. So I thought, well, I've got some time, why not? So that was sort of my way in. I had a few lessons with Jodie Freeman, based here at NCMA. And yeah, I really thought I've got so much experience singing in ensembles, working with different conductors, so I can surely bring a lot to that. And actually, I've really enjoyed working on that and working out for myself who I am as a conductor.
That led me to another one. Is how do you approach working with choirs to improve their blend and choral techniques?
I do talk a lot about blend. I do work, so I'm now conducting the Nelson Male Voice Choir, and we spend quite a lot of time working on the blend. For me, the blend is all about the vowel sounds when you're singing, really getting a uniform approach to vowel sounds. So in rehearsal, I get them to make all sorts of strange noises. I think they're getting used to it now. And really just kind of really think about the text, what the words you're singing are, and getting everyone to approach that the same way. So. Yeah.
Well, Jason's been working on us on articulation quite extensively. What motivated you to move to New Zealand, and how has it impacted your musical career?
Well, I married a Kiwi,
Okay.
so my husband grew up in Nelson, and I always knew it was his dream to come back home to bring up when we had children, to bring up children here. So I thought, well, it's going to be a good place to bring up a family, and it's given me a slight change of direction in terms of my career, because there's less of the consort singing work for me here, but there might be more solo opportunities, and certainly the conducting and the teaching and the leading small ensembles, that's something I wouldn't have done had we stayed in London. So it's given me a whole new avenue to explore.
Well, I think you have another thing at heart is working with young musicians. What's the most rewarding, what's about the techniques in mentoring young musicians?
I guess just the joy that kids can get when they actually realise that they they like singing together. I did last term. I was doing some work for the New Zealand Choral Federation, mentoring in primary schools. So I went into a few schools in the region and ran some workshops, in the classroom with the whole class, and a lot of them, the kids, especially the slightly older ones in the primary schools, were maybe a little bit uncertain, asking, why do we have to learn to sing? But by the time we'd got through to the end of their session, I think they all really enjoyed it. And actually there was one occasion where I couldn't arrange childcare for my then 9-month-old, and so I had to take her with me, and the kids actually loved having a little baby in the class with them. But at one point she started to get a little bit angsty and started crying, and so I just got all the kids to sing a lullaby to her, and she calmed down, and I said, look, that's why we learn to sing.
Well, music touched your heart and soul.
Exactly. Yeah.
As a mom, how are you introducing music and plans for your children? Because, as I said earlier when we were chatting, almost everybody has just been still in music, had some experience in childhood, as you've already talked about.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sort of consciously with my kids saying, right, now it's time to sing, now it's time to... But there's always music in our house, and particularly now with my littlest one, she just has to put up with it while I do some practice. And she's quite happy. When she sees me getting my violin out, she beams. She loves watching me play the violin for about 10 minutes, and then she needs some attention. And yeah, they love listening to me sing. I'll sing to them, when I'm changing nappies or when they're in the bath. And my older girl loves dancing to music. Quite often we'll just put some music on the speaker and have a little dance party at home. So yeah, there's a lot of music at home.
Well, what advice would you give to young musicians aspiring to build a career in performance and conducting?
Oh,
yeah.
Good question.
Yeah.
I guess just seize every opportunity that you are given, and don't try and define yourself maybe too early on. You might think that a particular role is not for you, or a particular opportunity is not for you, but actually explore it, because you never know what might come out of that.
Well, thank you, Rosemary, for sharing with us your journey, your passions, and insights into the world of classical music. And I've thoroughly enjoyed talking with you. So.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me.